Yeah, so someone's asking about how do catch cans work. I know we've talked about this a bunch.
I think we just kind of explained it a
Yeah,
little bit right there.
yeah, but I'll give a real quick review. So there is Nick, you mentioned something called blow by. Blow by is actually refers to the combustion pressure that escapes past the piston rings. So when your spark plug fires and you get combustion, a lot of pressure is created. Up to 2,000 psi is created inside the combustion chamber, which creates an opportunity for the piston and rod to be pushed down and to turn the crank. But not all that pressure can be held, and so there's typically a certain amount of blow by, or you can test this with a leak down test, which tests how well the piston rings are sealing. And so some amount will blow by. Now, the more power you make, the more blow by you'll get. Um, and what happens is in this combustion pressure escapes and it has to go somewhere, and so it goes into the crankcase. And if you had a perfectly sealed crankcase, then you would start to pressurize your crankcase. Crankcases are not designed to be pressurized; they're actually designed to be under light vacuum at all times. At worst case scenario, at atmosphere or 0 psi. And so what happens is if you get pressure inside your crankcase, air will start finding ways to leak out of the motor, and it will leak past the front and rear main seal, and lots of other little places. And so that now means that your engine's leaking oil. Um, and it also means that oil could be forced back up into the combustion chamber. So, at some point on the there's a compression stroke, and then there's a stroke where there's actually vacuum in the combustion chamber. So if you have vacuum in the combustion chamber and you have pressure in the crankcase, then oil is going to be forced up into the combustion chamber. So lots of bad things happen if you develop pressure in the crankcase. So every engine has a breather system that allows air to escape out of the crankcase, and allows these blow-by fumes to be evacuated from the crankcase. And typically, thanks to environmental regulations, uh, these fumes are routed back to the intake system where they can be passed through the combustion chamber and burnt off and then dealt with by the emission system. Um, the issue becomes that when you start increasing the power and the amount of blow by, this factory breather systems are not designed to deal with the additional flow that comes from that. And so what ends up happening is you get actual oil vapors and liquid oil pumping out of the motor, going into the intake system, into the PCV system, which is connected to your intake system. So now you have engine oil being forced out through the PCV system into the intake system. So the job of the catch can is we intercept the PCV system before it goes back to the intake, and we let that oil come in here, and it can fall into this can, and then we can drain it out through the bottom back to crankcase where the oil belongs. And ideally, what comes out of here is relatively clean air that can go back to your intake system and work. So that's the point of the catch can system. That's why you need it. Now, when you get cornering forces, this problem is exaggerated because the oil in the motor is designed to kind of be like this. But when you start pulling 1.3 Gs, that oil can be up here. And so that oil actually starts going places it's not supposed to. And then when you increase your revving speed as well, the crankshaft just throws oil. In fact, if you Google on YouTube, if you search on YouTube or Google, you can see videos where they've put a clear panel and you can see what happens to the oil. I mean, the crankcase just whips the oil into a froth. And of course, if you have water or other things in there, it's not good for the oil. You can basically create a meringue, like a whipped egg type mixture. So, anyways, that's just a real quick. I could talk for hours about this, but that's why we make catch can kits. That's why you would want to put one on your engine.
Yeah.
There's a lot of misconceptions about catch cans. There's a lot of misunderstandings about it.
No, they don't prevent carbon buildup.
Not really. I mean, unless you have a lot of oil going, but the carbon buildup issue is not because of oil. Not solely because of it. Of course, oil aggravates it, but There's the carbon buildup issue is just because there's no fuel or solvents constantly cleaning the port. If you look in a port injected motor, I mean, typically you can see above the injector area is usually pretty cruddy because you have these vapors that come out and deposit in the port. But post injector, where there's fuel, it's like looks brand new, and the back of the valve and everything should look really clean too. So